So I should have expected this after yesterday's video, and it is a fair question to ask, so I thought, well, it's Sunday, we can sit down and talk about it, and that is, has WWE become a bit stale? I don't mean like bread. Nobody wants to eat stale bread. That's disgusting. And the good thing about wrestling and not food products is that even if something does feel a little bit stale, a little bit dull, a little bit boring, if you want to use that word, it takes like 2 weeks before you can heat it up again. It's like when somebody says so-and-so is buried, and then within 14 days, an idea you've come up with, and it strikes fire, and people like it, and that person, you just forget about it. Instantly, you move on. It's both the benefit and the curse of having a non-stop wrestling show that goes on 52 weeks a year. And I think that kind of ties into the answer here, because I would argue that yes, right now, I don't think WWE is as interesting, I'll go with, as it has been probably over the last 4 years. Not all those episodes were great, of course they weren't. And of course, in that year when Roman Reigns retained the title for WrestleMania 39, that was also another occasion where people were like, oh man, maybe we should have changed the championship. But we got to WrestleMania 40 and Cody finished his story, and you kind of look back on it in hindsight, gone, you know what, we got there in the end. That's all that matters. But you can't expect the hot streak creatively to last forever. Now, this is making me making excuses. We'll get into that in just 1 second. But right now, you can see it in the ticket sales, you can see it in merchandise sales, you can see it in the amount of money they're making. Not that I think fans should worry about that, but I do think it kind of ties into the business side of things. WWE is still on fire, right? I don't want people to go, oh, Miller, I can't believe you said that. You sold out Survivor Series already, or at least they're on their way to do so. That's not what I'm saying. And also, I can only talk about it from my point of view. I said this on SmackDown Ups and Downs. I said it on the SmackDown Sit Down Chat we do on this channel. Please do subscribe to my fitness channel, because why the flub not? We're going to talk about Triple H soon for obvious reasons, but you may be loving it right now. This for you may be the best that WWE has ever been, and you should celebrate that fact, and you should not let anybody, be them a content creator or your friend Larry or your mum Susan, tell you otherwise, because you take your entertainment hours and you spend it on a form of entertainment. As long as the end of it, you feel good and you feel happy, then all is great in La La Land, however you want to pronounce it. And that does put me in a very curious position too, because even if WWE or AEW or any wrestling company is terrible, awesome, gives me loads to talk about. So very curiously, I can enjoy it from that fact, but I'm also smart enough to take that hat off and put my fan hat on. And yeah, I do think WWE at the moment has hit a little bit of a lull. I think I'll go back to that word, because that's sort of a middle word. It's perfectly watchable TV. It's perfectly serviceable. There are some stories that are really great. Let's not pretend that it wasn't only a couple of weeks ago when we had the Seth Rollins Money in the Bank cash in. I thought that was brilliant, even though it had leaked a little bit online. I'm not going to worry about that. I got real problems in my life. I do think everything we did with CM Punk and Gunther and CM Punk and Seth Rollins is very interesting, very entertaining. Also, that Cody Rhodes John Cena match was fire, right? So it's not like this is a complete bust, or like the pandemic era. My gosh, I had to watch WrestleMania 36 the other day. I don't think I could ever do it again. It is such a hard task. But I suppose if we focused on SmackDown, mostly because I think across the board, so anytime I say I don't like something, people go, you're meant to be positive. That is not what being positive about wrestling or life means. You can still be critical, you can still admit your feelings, but it just means you do it in a positive way. You don't start screaming at the camera and go, oh, it's the worst thing ever and everybody should die, which is what other people do enjoy doing. You kind of just talk about it in a nice way, as you would do with your friend if you were down the pub, and you don't bring all the doom and gloom to it, unless it comes from an honest place. That's what I think positivity is being. It comes from an honest place, and again, not this horrible negative stuff that people come up with. Also, I'm never going to lie to you. That would be nuts. However, I said it yesterday that I didn't particularly think SmackDown was a good show, and the feedback I got afterwards, and when I watched other people's videos that popped up on my feed, was a lot of other people going, yeah, that wasn't really for me, that episode. And I think when everybody is in tandem, that means we've hit on something. I just think yesterday's, it lacked star power for sure. Now, that's not a slight on Sikoa or a Sami Zayn or a Drew McIntyre. These are all top stars in WWE. But when you're lacking a Cody Rhodes, and you're lacking a John Cena, and you're lacking a Roman Reigns, and you're lacking a CM Punk, and for no longer can we say, but they're Raw guys, they're SmackDown guys. We've gone back to that thing when people are just switching brands all over the place. Well, it is going to be affected a little bit, because you have a tiered system, not just in WWE, in all walks of life. Even in football, the Premier League season started this weekend, and more people will tune into, I guess Man United and Arsenal is the biggest match this season. More people will tune into that because they're seen as star teams. It's exactly the same as pro wrestling. Doesn't mean the people just below them aren't awesome, but that's just the kind of way people gravitate towards towards something that, once again, is meant to provide you with fun. But it also just feels like the long-term storytelling aspect has just taken its foot off the gas just a teeny tiny little bit. So Sami Zayn jumping to SmackDown to fight the US title 6 months after not wanting to do that for the world title, there is reasons you can explain it, but it also feels a little bit drab. You're like, okay, you didn't want to do it back then because you didn't want to be manipulated by the bad guy, but doing it now is a bit curious. I kind of think it's going to tie into something with Karrion Kross, but we will wait and see. That is mad speculation on my end. But then you also have the issue that every single match, both on Raw and SmackDown, ends with distraction, interference, and confusion. Like the outlier matches now are the ones that end with a very, very specific winner and a very, very specific loser. Now, I'm sure this is mostly my pet peeve as opposed to yours, but when those balance or the scales do get tipped in the wrong direction, I always feel it weighing on my shoulders. It was the same in 2019 when WWE got carried away with it, and it's absolutely the same now. I always want to expect deep down in my tum-tum that I'm going to get a winner, and while I would never be surprised by a run-in, because WWE's essentially been doing this since the Attitude Era, I always wanted to take me by surprise, just a teeny tiny little bit where I'm going, oh man, well that's an interesting direction to go on, and maybe that's a good word to throw in there as well. It's not interesting when it happens every single match, and it also takes away from the groups you have, your bad guy groups, who should be doing that. I've talked about this a lot. It's what Seth Rollins' group should be doing. If they had been the only people to interrupt over the last, let's say, 3 months, then you'd really be hating them right now. Like, you would have so much rage. You're like, man, you keep stealing them away. Like, even though the last 4 Raw main events have ended in disqualification, if it'd just been Seth Rollins' group doing it, you'd be like, oh, if you could suspend your disbelief, because of course we all know what wrestling is. But when everybody is doing it, you're like, well, why aren't the good guys doing it too? Because clearly it's not a problem. Management aren't bothered by this. They keep telling everybody seconds to go to the ring, and then that does sort of take away from what Seth Rollins' group specifically is trying to be, which is the dominant, we're taking over WWE. Well, not really. Not particularly. It's great that you won the World Championship, and again, the Money in the Bank cash-in was great, but you're not doing anything different from what everybody else is doing, because the way in WWE right now is to just run all over the place, and because we're not doing that, you do get 4 DQs back-to-back, it does make you think, well, why aren't we doing something different? Like, are there just no ideas? Have the creative team sort of got writer's block? Again, I don't mean that in a disparaging way. I just mean if we can figure it out, they can figure it out, right? They're not stupid. They will be looking down and go, oh, wait a minute, we're doing similar things here. So is it something we're not seeing? Is it something that's actually going to play out down the line? I don't like using that phrase because I think it's become a get out of jail free catchphrase, right? You say it just because you go, well, you're going to have to wait and see what happens. Then we get 6 months down the line, we go, wait a minute, nothing happened, and you rightfully throw your toys out the pram. And I think the reason it was kind of so exposed on SmackDown was the stuff with Sami Zayn, which is a bit like, I love the Solo Sikoa group, but again, they are completely marginalized because everybody is running around. The Women's Championship doesn't get on television segments that are allowed in front of the crowd. They're all done backstage. That makes you go, well, am I even meant to care about that belt? The US title for the women never gets on there. The US Championship, which I now think is going to be between Sami Zayn and Solo Sikoa. Jacob Fatu has just given up on it, and that was a big feud that we were having, and now Jacob and Sami are friends. I think a lot of it could be, and I'm going to be a slight hypocrite here, so you have to forgive me, but going back to sort of Sami Zayn being in the bloodline, or being around bloodline people, does feel a little bit like, well, it was good before, we should do it again. And that's how a lot of people feel about Seth Rollins and CM Punk too. It's like, well, can't we just do something else, even if we are going to double back round? Now, again, I'm not totally bored of that one yet, but I can understand if somebody would be, and it doesn't really feel like we're heading in new directions. And at one point, that's what we were getting all of the time. Like, WWE would set up potential feuds. Like, you saw CM Punk and Cody Rhodes having their big promo off, and they weren't friends. CM Punk said to Cody Rhodes, I'm going to take that title off you, so you're planting seeds. Now, we haven't got there yet, but that would be fine, all things considered. And like, take the Randy Orton stuff. Nothing wrong with Cody Rhodes going on his John Cena detour as Randy Orton teams with Jelly Roll, but since SummerSlam, we haven't seen Randy Orton, and I'm sure he's going to come back eventually, but people don't talk about him. People don't talk about Damian Priest, and you just start thinking, I don't understand. If you're a Damian Priest fan and you started watching wrestling 6 months ago, you're going to be baffled because you don't get these updates. And I think if that was just a singular thing, you could get away with it, right? But when it ties into everything else, once again, you start questioning, well, what are we doing here? Like, have people just forgotten to talk about this? Do we actually not know the plan is going to be? Next week on SmackDown, we're getting R-Truth versus Aleister Black, and we haven't really seen R-Truth for a while. I like the goofy, serious combination, but he sort of comes and goes. Look at Carmelo Hayes. Carmelo Hayes was gone for ages, which was absolutely ridiculous. He comes back and he goes right back into a tag team with The Miz, which is what we've already done. What match are we getting next week? Tiffany Stratton versus Nia Jax, that we keep going back to over and over again. And I think that's where the issue does come, both in how a match ends and the angles and the matches we're getting. It's all stuff that we've been doing for a long time. We don't have anything fresh that is coming into our face, apart from Drew McIntyre and Cody Rhodes, which I personally thought was the best thing on the last two SmackDowns. Like Drew McIntyre destroying Cody's head into the announce table and then cutting a wonderful promo going, it's not my fault. He attacked me first. And then you go, oh yeah, he did do that. That's the new WWE that I like, where you set up an angle, to use that word again, and you kind of change expectations a little bit, but within the realms of the story and within the realms of truth. And you can hate Drew McIntyre because he just comes across as a massive heel, even if what he's saying does have elements of, well, truth in it, once again. So that's what I think we probably need to get back to, is fresh matchups, fresh storylines, and not falling back into the same routines over and over again, which I do kind of think, I think it's a holdover or a fallout from WrestleMania 41. I think that's when the seed was kind of planted, because the Travis Scott thing was not the best idea. I totally understand that I am on an island with myself on this. Even John Cena did an interview yesterday, or some kind of fan convention, where he said he didn't think that he thought he failed, with his own words, with his promo after the Elimination Chamber heel turn. I loved all of heel John Cena. I'm not saying all of it was good, but I just really went along for the ride, and I was like, well, at least we got this. And then him coming back to being a babyface at SummerSlam, well, actually, that ties in too, right? It sort of justified the whole heel turn for me as well, because that moment when the lights came on was so good. But also, we did that in an evening, right? It's totally crazy. We did it in an evening. Cody Rhodes just beat him up, made him sign a contract, then 7 days later, John Cena went, you're right, Cody Rhodes, I shouldn't have done it. And I do have an element of respect is way too strong. But if WWE decided that, you know what, this hasn't worked, we will just pull the trigger, I'd get it. But then you have the Brock Lesnar conundrum, where I'm like, I don't think you'd made it for that decision. I don't think you had done anything wrong. I think you wanted Brock Lesnar to come back at SummerSlam because you needed a moment, and therefore you need John Cena to be a good guy, even though he would have got cheered anyway. And even that, pushing aside all the other issues that we've talked about and just focusing on the story, Brock Lesnar coming back because you felt like you needed a moment, to me, once again feels like a get-out-of-jail-free card. How is John Cena stood there after his last ever world title match back to being a babyface not enough to end a show? Is it because WWE has kind of gone, man, we don't have, I don't want to say we don't have much in the tank, because again, I think I'm pushing it too strong, but for whatever reason, they felt the need that big pay-per-view, PLE, had to end with somebody big returning, which they've done time and time again. I understood it got a pop. Again, you can watch all my videos to get my feelings on it. But it just kind of feels like we've gone back to the well. I don't need to see Brock Lesnar in 2025, only because here we are on August 17th, and he's vanished again. I want people on my television set. Like, I can kind of take 1 week of no Cody Rhodes and John Cena because who they are, and I understand they have outside projects. But when somebody does come back for the first time, and now apparently we're not even doing the match until late September, I don't think that's good television. I don't. And then I think you can kind of see it tying in to other areas of Raw and SmackDown. I always enjoy NXT, because NXT is always a mixed bag. You will get totally insane things, then an amazing match, and then you'll get somebody doing something almost comical like a cartoon, and a match that I like the developmental matches, but you can understand it's two rookies that are sort of getting their experience. I get a huge kick out of that. So NXT to me just kind of exists in its own world, which I do like. And again, I'm not saying that other promotions don't do this. Of course they do. I would argue that Edge and Christian, as I would call them now, we pulled the trigger on that too fast as well, which makes me confused. But after I watched that SmackDown, put it like this, on ups and downs, I gave overall SmackDown rating a down. I don't think I've done that in a year. Understandable. Once again, I do try and approach wrestling as a positive way, and I always try and look at it when someone's in the audience, because most people that go to a wrestling show enjoy it. But I just thought that there were too many nothing matches on that SmackDown. I don't want to say it felt like an episode of WWE Main Event, but it felt like an episode of WWE Main Event. And also, this is a compliment to WWE, because even when SmackDown first went back to 2 hours a couple of months ago, it was giving us some really good episodes, and it was giving us some new programs too. Again, Aleister Black versus Damian Priest. I mean, in hindsight, why wasn't that on SummerSlam? That's kind of fallen into the floor. And you know, the Naomi situation, of course, meant we had to shuffle the deck. I think that's why we went fast forward with the Oscar turn. But I just think WWE can be more patient. And I don't think they're being complacent. complacent, but with the old WWE, as I always call it, they did get complacent from here and there. But that was mostly because they had a monopoly over the North American mainstream wrestling industry, and they thought, well, we're doing fine here, we're doing fine there. We can feed the audience whatever we want, and that will be okay. And that's not how it works. The audience is way smarter than that. My bizarre comparison was always the Mario games. So you'd be like, what are you talking about? But Nintendo don't make Mario games for kids, even though predominantly they're aimed at children. They understand that a kid knows a good game from a bad game, so they make sure they put all their love and their care and their skill into it. It's the same with wrestling, right? Even a kid, even a child can go, this isn't as good as it once was, and they'll go do other things, and then us nerds, adults will go on the internet, and we will yell about it. So I guess to summarize, no, I don't think WWE is on their creative peak at the moment. I also think it's a compliment to them, like I say, because they really have been hitting it out of the park for the last 4 years. But if you said to me right now, Simon, should I watch that last episode of SmackDown? I would say just read up about it or watch some clips on YouTube or TikTok or whatever. If you went back to that Raw, I'd say, well, you can probably do the same thing because it felt like a copy and paste episode, which is not what you want. And I would argue that you have to go back before SummerSlam, really. And even then, there are also a couple of episodes, I remember saying it when I was summarizing shows, that would just, well, I don't know, man. I'm not entirely sure that you need to dedicate 2.5 hours to this or 2 hours over there. And I do think there is one last example I'd like to throw in there. And I think this may have become the majority as opposed to the minority. It was bad anyway, but the New Day heel turn, that of course was way back in November 2024. It was end of last year, right? Of course it was. That was never followed up on properly, and they didn't win the titles soon enough, and they kind of faded into the background. That now, and that's nothing to do with them, right? There was nothing they could do with their creative. In fact, they were very funny and entertaining, as they always are. But I kind of feel like that kind of stuff has crept in more. For example, Grayson Waller all of a sudden joining up with the New Day, and Austin Theory disappearing. It sounds like Austin Theory is injured. That's just a very lame way to go about it, when you can do whatever you want, because it's pro wrestling. And we've seen a lot of other stuff like that as well. And I would like to sort of steer away from that. I think if all of a sudden you do hit a wall, nothing wrong with taking a few weeks and going, okay, we need to get through a few episodes so we can ramp it up again. I also do think it comes down to the fact there's just too many shows overall. WWE is running a crazy amount of special television shows or special PLEs. More are coming up. Again, apparently it's going to be Over the Limit or maybe another Bad Blood in September. So you can never really get out of one pay-per-view before you have another pay-per-view. When that much content is being thrown into your face, it's hard to tell new stories and it's hard to let things build because you've got no time. And WWE is going to keep doing that until they see a drop-off in sales, essentially. Let's not forget they're still charging incredibly high ticket prices. I'm never going to criticize you for spending that money, because one, it's your money, but also two, only you can determine what something is worth. And trust me, if all of a sudden they're in a 15,000 building and they're only selling 6,000 tickets, those ticket prices will come down because they want to make sure they keep the sellout going. That's far more important to them. So I would say that no, I'm not saying enjoying, screw it, let's just talk as simple as we can. I'm not enjoying WWE as much as I have been in the past, but wrestling does go up and down. I would know about that. It is a roller coaster. It is cyclical. And that just happens. I mean, you're never going to agree with this, but I sometimes feel it. I could just be being a geek. Sometimes WWE is on fire and you just want to watch that. And all of a sudden AEW is on fire and you just want to watch that. Or it could be another wrestling promotion that you watch. I mean, if you're into New Japan after the G1 last night, you're probably super pumped that Takeshita won that. And you can have the Zack Sabre Jr. match. Oh my gosh, that suplex, whatever the flub it was from the top rope, was absolutely terrifying. But right now, I think WWE is in a quiet period, and I hope they get out of it soon, because again, I don't support WWE, I don't support AEW, I support professional wrestling, and every time I sit down to watch a show, I watch it in the context that it's presented in. I try not to bring any of my own problems or any of my own judgments to it, because I don't think that's fair. And yes, last few weeks, WWE has just felt a little bit harder to watch than usual. And also, I found myself being able to make more jokes about it. And I've been doing this job a long time, and I've learned that if you find things to take the mick out of, it usually means silly things are happening. And if you'd like to see some of those skeets, which are embarrassing, I'm not saying I'm not a child, I totally am. You can go to my TikTok at Simon Miller. I think it's 316 or Simon J. Miller. Search for it, you will find it. Otherwise, though, let me know about your comments about this before. What am I talking about? Let me know your comments in the comments down there. I didn't want to say comments twice, so I went off in my own crazy direction. Like the video, share the video, and subscribe. Click the notification bell. Otherwise, yes, I've got a fitness channel. We are going to talk about that reaction to that Triple H picture, which I couldn't believe, very soon. Search for Simon Miller Fitness. Grillermind.com/Simon. You go to Simon, get 10% off. Watch-alongs, Patreon.com/Simon316. Talked about social media, Simon316. TikTok, Simon Miller. Cameo, Simon Miller. And Pro Wrestling Tees, a big cartel. Simon Miller there too. Otherwise, as always, if you're loving WWE, you are my favorite person in the world. If you think it's a pile of crap, you're my favorite person in the world too, because you're allowed your opinions, and I respect them. I'll see you tomorrow.